Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Speech and Language Kids podcast. Today, we are taking virtual field trips. So I'm super excited to bring this one to you today. This has been a godsend for multiple people I know this week because we have been having crazy rains. So a lot of our end of the year celebrations have not been happening, which means we get to go on some virtual field trips. So today we're going to talk about how to use virtual field trips in your speech language therapy sessions, but this could be used for your children at home, for children in a classroom, all kinds of other ways to use it as well. But we're going to specifically be talking about it from the perspective of speech language pathologists. So I love this whole idea of going on virtual field trips. Field trips are my favorite part of being a speech language pathologist. When I was working at the special education preschool that I worked at, this was my favorite time, was when we got to take the kids out and do real world things and give them experiences that they may not otherwise have. And then to be able to work on speech and language skills while they're having those experiences. And I absolutely love the ability of field trips to transport children to a place that they've not been before or give them those opportunities. Hey, Sharon, welcome. As we're going along, you can pop those questions in the chat if you have any questions. So a couple of great things that field trips do for us, right? So the first one is that giving them experiences outside of the classroom, outside of the therapy room, give them access to background knowledge that they may need to understand language later in their lives. So if we have a student who has never heard of the thing that they're reading about in class, it's going to make it harder for them to relate to that content and understand it. And our children with speech and language delays are already at a disadvantage on understanding that information. So if we can boost their background knowledge, then they're going to have more to pull from when they're experiencing language out in the real world, right? So for example, when I was working with a group this last semester, I had a story that I read about a child breaking her leg and getting a cast and using crutches, and there was an x-ray. And I found out that the girls in my language group that I was doing this with, they were I think they were third grade. Never heard of x-rays. Never seen a cast, didn't know what that was, didn't know what crutches were. So the whole story was lost on them because there was all these gaps in their background knowledge. So when we can go on field trips, we can take our students out of their therapy room, out of their everyday environment, and give them access to this background knowledge that they can then use later. Okay, so that's one reason that I love field trips. But another one is it gives them opportunities to practice their speech and language skills in a really meaningful, impactful way. There's something about a field trip that just engages more parts of your brain and gets you excited. And so we're able to take the speech and language skills that they're learning in the speech room and apply it to something real world that they're really excited about in the moment. So I love that as well. And then the other great thing here is that field trips give them something that they can talk about over and over and over again. Now, if it's not a super chatty child or a child who's retelling past events yet, it might just be you working on talking about it in your sessions. But hopefully, they'll go home and tell their parents, they'll tell their teachers, their friends. And if we have embedded a speech and language target into that experience, then they're going to be more likely to practice that new speech and language skill that we taught them when they retell that event. So there's all these amazing ways that field trips help us, right? However, I understand you can't always just pile all your speech kids into a bus and take them on a field trip. But that reminds me, I have always thought it would be really, really cool to have a speech bus where I drive around to different preschools or schools around town, and they pile in the bus and we do an activity and then they get back off and I go to the next school. How amazing would that be? We could do field trips on my speech bus. That'll be my next business. But anyway, back to this idea. So this is where the idea of virtual field trips come in. Yeah, we can't take them on a field trip every 30 minutes in our sessions, but what we can do is bring those field trips to them inside our therapy space. And that is a virtual field trip. So a virtual field trip is when we give them an experience by letting them watch webcams, live cameras that are trained on something. There are virtual field trips, there are virtual museum tours. There are all of these different ways that we can experience something that's totally outside of our norm, but in a way that feels like it's really happening right now. And that's what our virtual field trips are. So I'm going to go through a whole bunch of my favorites, but I know that there are even more. Hey, Jean, welcome. So Jean and Sharon, thank you for watching live. You guys can pop over into the chat. And if you have any additional field trips, virtual field trips that you know of that you like, you can pop those in the chat. Or if you've tried any of ours, because this is what we are doing inside our hub this week. So we've had a couple of those already starting. So you can say if you've had any experiences, good or bad, with any of those. I'd love to see that. Okay, so let's talk about the different kinds of virtual field trips you can go on, and then we'll talk about how you can work on speech and language skills while you're there or while you're visiting. Okay, so the first one is the San Diego Zoo, and this is the one we did yesterday inside the hub. And so the San Diego Zoo website has a webcam section for kids. There is a page specifically, it's like Young Explorers or something, I can't remember what they call it, but it has one page that has a picture of each of the different animals that they have a webcam for, and there's quite a few. And so you pull up that page, and then you just click on the animal that you want to look at, and it just shows you a live feed of that animal's enclosure. And so, just like the real zoo, sometimes we see them, sometimes they're asleep, sometimes we don't see them. And so it's kind of like a hide and seek game, because you're trying to find where the animals are active and playing and doing something worth looking at, right? But even if you don't see them, even if you pull up this screen in your session and you have, oh, this is the penguin exhibit, and you're looking and there's water, but nobody's swimming around, you can't see any animals, it still gives us something to talk about, right? Because we can say, where are they? Are they here? I don't see them. Where do you think they are? And so we can still be using all of these different language and speech skills that we need to work on while maybe not even finding the animals we were looking for in the first place. But the reason I like the San Diego Zoo one is because they do have a whole lot of different animals, and usually at least one or two of them are up and doing something. And sometimes they will even like zoom around and find the animal for you. So that's really fun as well. All right, so that was my first one. And then the one we did today is the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which has a similar setup where there's multiple different cameras, and then you kind of pop around to the different tanks, and there's sharks, and there's jellyfish, and there's all these different sea creatures, all in their, their different enclosures. And that one's fun because you are more likely to see something. You might not see the big something you were hoping for in that tank, but all the tanks have fish and, activity. So there's always something to look at the Monterey Bay Aquarium one as well. So zoos and aquariums, great place to do virtual field trips. If you have one that is close to you, you can look and see if they have a virtual field trip, because it's possible that your students may have already been to that place or may go in the future. And then we're starting to build those connections, right? So we're able to say, oh, I remember going to the shark tank. I saw that same shark, or vice versa. Later, they go to that place and they say, I saw this in the speech room, right? So we're being able to build those bridges and help them make connections between experiences and talk about them. All right. So those are great. Okay. Here's one that you may not have thought of. And this one is probably one of my favorites. It's for tomorrow. So if you're inside the hub, you have not gotten the link to this yet, but you can always pull it up on your own. But this is the Las Vegas Airport runway. And I know that sounds weird, but think about how many of our students, our clients, love vehicles and like just airplanes in general, super fun. I feel like this one's going to hit really hard, and I'm excited to see how it goes tomorrow. But the Las Vegas Airport runway has a camera that I think it automatically trains, like it focuses in on whichever plane is landing or taking off right then. And it focuses in on that plane, and then it follows it. And while it's following it, it shows you a little card at the bottom that says where it's come from and where it's going to, and how fast it's going, what the altitude is. And so it gives you all this information about that particular plane. And then because it is the Las Vegas Airport runway, it is always hopping, right? There's always somebody landing or taking off. So it's just nonstop planes, and you can just sit there and watch it. And it is so very fun. I sat there and watched it for the longest time just by myself because I was like, well, this is fascinating. So love that one for sure, especially if you've got little boys that love transportation or any of that kind of stuff. That sounds like a cool one, right, Sharon? I know, I'm excited. All right, so that one's tomorrow. And then for those of you who are listening to this as a podcast, we are also creating activities inside the hub for each of these ones that I'm talking about right now. So those are available each day. We'll have a different one inside there. But anyway, okay, next category of virtual field trips is natural wonders. So there are a ton of really cool natural wonders that have webcams trained on them right now, which I also didn't know. I had a lot of fun looking this one up. Okay, so there are volcanoes, active volcanoes that have webcams where you can actually see the lava. So the ones in Hawaii, there were a couple that I saw that had actual lava that you could see, and it's steaming and it's very cool. And so like those, very cool to look at for a moment, but it's not going to change. It's not like the animals where you could say, oh, and now he's eating. Oh, and now he's rolling around. So that one would be good to visit and then talk about what you see and then maybe visit another one. So I think Thursday is our Natural Wonders Day, and I actually built like a dashboard. So you can click on different ones, kind of like you can at the San Diego Zoo. And so we've got volcanoes, geysers. So Old Faithful at Yellowstone National Park is one that has a camera. And I think there's actually several of the geysers at Yellowstone that they have cameras on. And then there's a table that tells you the next predicted time that they're expected to erupt. And so you can kind of time it and get on the right one. But yeah, so the geysers have Niagara Falls has one, which is just a huge waterfall. And you can see like the tour boat going up and looking at it. And so you can kind of pop around to some different natural wonders. And those are also great things to talk about, especially if they're learning about any of that in their classroom, or maybe they've recently had a vacation and they went to something like that, or even for those kids who have never been exposed to this at all. And like I said, we're going to talk about how we work on the speech and language along with it. I know I want to like jump to that, but I want to tell you all the ones that I found. Okay. The next category is landmarks. So this is another one, especially if they've read about any of these in class or they're learning about it in one of their units, or it goes along with a unit that they're learning, then being able to visit a landmark is really cool too. So some of the ones I found, Statue of Liberty actually has one in her torch, I think, and it's focused down on her crown, and then you can see the ground below her, and so you can see people walking around the Statue of Liberty. So you kind of see the whole thing, but it's from up high, which is a really cool angle. So that one was really cool. The Eiffel Tower has one. The Sydney Bay, where it has the Opera House and all of that. You can see the ships coming in and out. That one's really cool. Abbey Road crossing in Great Britain has one, that very famous crosswalk. You can see people crossing Abbey Road. So there's some really cool landmarks that you can look at as well. And again, there's a ton of those. I will say keep in mind time differences, and honestly, for any of the live stuff, time difference makes a difference. So if you are on the opposite side of the world from one of those places, note that it's going to be dark when you pull up that webcam, but that even gives you something to talk about with students, having them understand that just because it's daytime here doesn't mean it's daytime everywhere, right? And so like the Sydney Bay definitely has lots of bright lights, and that one's really cool to look at night. And like Eiffel Tower always lit up, right? So don't feel like you have to stay in your time zone. You can definitely look at some other ones, but just note that, like, if you look at one of the outdoor animal enclosures at the zoo, it might be dark. Although I did notice the other day, the San Diego Zoo, I think some of them at night loop the feed from the daytime, because I looked at some of them and I was like, that looks like the middle of the day, and I know it's dark there still. So so that's kind of fun too. Okay, next category of virtual field trips are historic sites. So what I have found is a lot of historic sites, especially the ones that are, kind of outdoors, have a Google Maps tour where if you can imagine, if you're on Google Maps and you're on Street View, you know how you can like step down the road, and so it'll let you kind of like look and see what the houses look like right here, but then you can move forward and see those houses and then move forward again. And so that is available for a lot of historic sites as well, just through Google Maps, but then some of those sites have their own as well. So the ones I found specifically, I think on Google Maps, was the Colosseum had one you could step through. Machu Picchu, which is like Native American ruins. I can't remember which one's Machu Picchu. Pompeii, the city of Pompeii that was, buried in volcanic ash. And then the pyramids of Giza. All of those have step-through tours. Super cool. And then finally, the last category is virtual tours that are housed on like a website for a place, but they allow you to step through the exhibits in your own time. So it's kind of like the Google Maps one, but they're the inside stuff. So the Smithsonian has a really cool one where you can go through the different exhibits and you can learn about each thing. So webcams are nice because you're like, oh, it's live right now. Smithsonian or those virtual tours are nice because you can stop and you can say, okay, let's learn about this thing or let's talk about it. And then you can move through at your own pace. The Louvre also has one. The Anne Frank House, if they've been learning about that, and Hearst Castle are all really cool ones as well. So again, virtual tours became very, very popular during the pandemic, and a lot of those places went through the work to create them and have just left them up. And some of them update and some of them are kind of older, but there's a lot of opportunities to match what they're learning with something that is in the real world through a virtual tour, a webcam, or something like that. So you definitely use these suggestions, but you can also just search for, virtual field trip and then provide some sort of parameter, if you're looking at specific parts of history or specific types of science. There's all kinds of different stuff. Oh, another one I forgot to put on here for webcams is the International Space Station has one, and you can actually see what Earth looks like from space. So that one's really cool as well. All right, so let's talk about how do we work on speech and language skills while they're on that field trip. So the idea is you're in your speech room, you have some screen that you've pulled up the virtual field trip on. And so then you are engaging with each other, engaging during the session, but you have the virtual field trip feed going next to you. So the first way to work on speech and language skills is just to encourage them to use whatever their target skill is right now while they're talking about what they see and even when they're making decisions about what to see next. So if we're looking at, the list of all the animals, how are we going to decide which animal to look at? Oh, you want to look at the penguin and you want to look at the panda. Oh my gosh, we have a problem. You guys want to look at different things. Okay, let's stop and see if we can decide together which one we should look at. Do you guys have any suggestions for how we could solve this problem? And we can work through while using their speech sound that they're working on or their grammatical skill they're working on or answering questions, or maybe the skill is the negotiation, the social interaction piece, right? Whatever it is that you're working on in speech, just work that into the conversation. And so for that, I would recommend picking one skill that you want to target for that kid in that session and just focus on that one thing, but do it within the context of that full virtual field trip, right? Okay, next one is to have prompts and encourage them to talk about what they're seeing. So this is what we've been doing inside the hub this week. Every day I've been posting a different virtual field trip prompt activity. And so we do a new printable activity every weekday. All of our activities are based on a 20-sided dice roll. I have mine here. And so you roll the dice and then you look at the table. It's a 1 through 20 table, and it tells you something to do. It asks you a question. It gives you a prompt, an activity. It has something going for it. So all of our activities this week are virtual field trips, and all of our D20 tables are a different prompt or challenge or question that goes along with that particular field trip. So the one tomorrow, when they're going to the airport, you get to ask questions about where would they travel to, or where do they think this one is going? What do you think the people will do when they get to Colorado? Do you think they'll go skiing? So lots of fun little prompts and challenges. We had a couple of movement challenges built in as well. So, you get to act like the animal or pretend you're a plane flying around. I had mixed results on that. My one of my friends who teaches 5th grade, she tried them and she said she could only get 3 of her kids to do the movement challenges. But I think Tracy said that they went great for her. So it probably depends on your group. But yeah, so you could have a list of prompts, questions, challenges for them to do while they are watching the field trip. Okay. Let's see, you could show them something and then have them retell it to you using their skill. Okay. So maybe we pull up the elephant enclosure and we watch the elephant for a few minutes and then we close it down and we say, okay, now retell me all the things you saw the elephants do. But remember, we're using your good R sound. Or remember, we're saying he instead of him. So you can use different skills and kind of prompt them through it, but have them retell what they saw. Let's see. Oh, another one would be to have them plan out and write what they saw. So you could say, okay, we're going to write a little paragraph about what we saw at the Smithsonian. And so we go through and we find it. We say, oh, this one looks good. What should we write about this exhibit? And then you can help them plan it out. What's our topic sentence? What are our details? You can make a little word map. And then you can have them actually write the paragraph out. So that would be a way to work on those organizational skills and those writing skills and incorporating their different language targets in that. We can also tie this to books. So if you have any books that you already own or that you can borrow from teachers, especially something they've been reading in class that you can tie this to, you can read them a story or read them a passage about this topic and then relate it to what you see on the virtual field trip. So that's going to connect even more, right? It's going to build more bridges between what they read to what they saw, to what we said, to what they answered, to how we had a conversation about it, right? And so there's all these different tie-ins that help make this stuff real. Because for so many of our students, when they are hearing information or when they are reading information, they're not retaining it. They're not able to connect, oh, we're reading about elephants. I saw an elephant once. And so if we can kind of force those connections for them where we say, okay, we're reading about elephants. Now let's look at an actual elephant right now in the real world. What is he doing? And we're going to tie those two together and then build those bridges for them. That's going to help that information stick. And it's going to help their brain understand that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. When I hear information, when I read a text, I am supposed to be connecting that to other parts of my brain, other things that I have experienced in my life. And we can start to help them make those connections. All right. And then the last one I had would be to have them create a thank you note for the people that run that particular place. So they could write a thank you note to the zookeepers for keeping the elephants safe and happy. They could write a note to a park ranger for making sure that the camera was on so that you could watch the geyser erupt. So that's a great way to kind of help them remember what they saw, tie it to some words and some language, and then even use some of that writing skill, or maybe they just draw a picture. And then, if you want to send those to those people, I'm sure they would love it, but it doesn't necessarily have to. You don't necessarily have to find someone to send it to. It could just be an exercise too. So lots of different ways that we can work on speech and language while going on these super fun virtual field trips. I don't know if you can see it behind me. My background is blurred. We took a giant box that I pulled out of recycling from the school and turned it into a school bus. That was our craft activity for this week. And Buttercup, the speech gnome, was driving it for a bit. She's back out front in front of my house. But you could have a prop like that where you have maybe a big box they can climb inside and pretend it's a school bus, or you can just have a little one that you have on your desk as a prop, just to make it fun, help them feel connected and engaged, and understand, hey, we're doing this as an experience. It's not just we're doing screens, we're watching YouTube. We're actually pulling up stuff that's live. We're pretending we're going there, and then you can kind of create this whole little virtual world for them, which I think is super fun. So I hope this was good for you guys. I hope that you go on some of these virtual field trips and let us know how it goes. I would love to have that. And then we've got the Monterey Bay Aquarium is already in there. So this is May 19th, 2026. So if you're still still, if you listen to this as soon as it comes out, you can still pop into the hub and grab today's worksheet. But remember, those go away after every day. And then tomorrow is the airport. Thursday is the natural wonders. And then, Friday is puppy cams. I didn't even talk about puppy cams. We have 3 puppy cams. They are all playrooms for puppies who are learning to do really important jobs. So there's the Denali Park has a dog sled team, and they raise their puppies and they train them. So they're training to be dog sled team. There's one set of puppies that are training to be warrior companions, so companions for veterans, and then one that are seeing eye dogs. And so they're all the puppy rooms. So cute. That one's going to be fun as well. So yes, if you're listening this week, pop into the hub. You go to hub.speechandlanguagekids.com. We upload the new activity by 8 a.m. Central Time every morning. And then the next day we refresh it and we give you a new one. So you don't have to do any planning or prep. You just come in, print off today's activity, and you're ready for your sessions. Super easy and super fun this week. We're going to have a lot of fun. All right. Thank you all so much for joining me on the Speech and Language Kids podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.